Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing well this week. I wanted to round off the month of June with a book related video. I realize I haven't made recent reads in a really long time. Even though I've been talking about books, I haven't been talking about which books I've read recently. And I don't know if you remember, but around the end of last year, I set myself the goal to read 42 books this year. And so far, it's the end of June and I've read 20 books. I mean, it depends on how you count them. I'm only counting books that I have finished, but I count a book of any size and of any kind. And yeah, so I think I'm pretty close to my goal. You know, I'm lagging a tiny bit behind, but that's mainly because I was really busy at university and unable to read what I wanted at the time. But now I'm kind of back into my reading habits and I'm really trying to meet this goal. But I'm also, one of the things I'm noticing about this goal is that because it's so many books and I usually don't even track my reading, so I don't actually know how many books I read last year or the year before that. I'm leaning towards choosing books that are a bit shorter so that I can finish them and then I can write them on my list. So it's not really a good thing, I don't think. So I'm going to try to tackle bigger books as well. But another thing I've noticed is that this goal is allowing me to finish books, because the reason I set the goal is because a lot of the time I'll read like 50%, 75% of a book, and then I'll just put it down and I won't even finish it. And it's so frustrating because I have so many books right now on the bottom shelf of this bookshelf. If you're interested in learning how I organize my books, I have a video about that I made this month. But I have so many books on this bottom row that I read a significant portion of, I just never finished, and so I'm not letting myself put them on the top row. So this year is a year of finishing books I start, and it is a year of reading as much as possible, especially now that I have my freedom. And with that being said, let's just get into the books that I've read this year that I've loved. They're just gonna narrow them down to 10 books that I've loved. But first, as usual, I have to make some honorable mentions that didn't make the top 10, but were really good books nonetheless. And those are basically my favorite books of all time. You guys are probably bored of hearing it, but it is Restaurant at the End of the Universe and Life, the Universe, and Everything. Books 2 and 3 of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I am doing a reread of my favorite series, which is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and these are the second and third books that I finished this year. They are so good, and these editions, the folio editions I got for Christmas from my dad, and they're so beautiful and they have illustrations, and they make me so happy and they fill me with so much joy. And I will definitely be trying to finish the reread of the series this year. I'm also on like a related note, because I know that Douglas Adams and Terry Pratchett have like similar vibes, similar styles. I am going to start maybe reading the Discworld series this year, so if you guys are into that, let me know down below which books I should read. At the moment, I'm looking at Pyramids and Mort. Those are the two that I'm going to start with. I'm not going to read them in order, but I know that there are just so many books in that series. No way I'm going to finish it, but I do want to start that this year. Anyway, so those were the honorable mentions. One of the best books I read this year, I read this book 2 or 3 times this year, was Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. I wrote an essay on it, which is why there's so many tabs. It's so good. I made a whole video about lessons I learned from this book. I'll link that somewhere, and you should check that out if you're interested. But Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor and Stoic, and this is basically his journal. It was meant to be unpublished, but it's so readable. He's definitely the best writer of all of the Stoics that I've read. I took a whole course on Stoicism this year, and this was just like crucial to my mental health over the course of the year. So yeah. The next book, this is in no particular order, Algorithms to Live By. This is the book that I most recently finished, and my mind was blown. My mind was blown all the way throughout reading this book. This is like one of the most informative books that I've ever read. It has so much information, it's insane. It talks about how to make decisions, called Algorithms to Live By, the computer science of human decisions. And it just talks about how to make decisions, how computers make decisions, how the kind of problems that we have to solve on a day-to-day basis as humans are really complicated, and how computers have to solve very similar problems and how they go about it and how we can learn from them and they can learn from us. And it's just like super interesting. I learned about the invention of the pro and cons list. I learned about how sorting works, how memory works, how like what is the optimal ratio that you should make between exploring something new and exploiting the information that you've gained from your exploration. And there's a little chapter on game theory. There's a chapter on randomness that's super interesting. It's super interesting, and it does go into like some detail of like the mathematics behind some of these problems. So in those sections, like I sometimes followed it, I sometimes didn't, but it also has like really accessible anecdotes and just a really readable style. Like it is super dense with information, but it's not unreadable. And I just really recommend this book. It's so good. Another book I read, which is amazing, that I talked about in my poetry bookshelf tour, is Rapture by Carol Ann Duffy. This, as well as the last book I mentioned, were recommended by Lena Norms. Lena's channel is amazing, and I'm one of her gumptioners. I support her on Patreon. She's just absolutely amazing. And this is just like a really great poetry collection, like so well written. And just everything about this was so great. It is a poetry collection about love, so if you have recently been heartbroken, I would not approach this one immediately until like you're ready, but otherwise it's so good. For example, there's this poem called Quick Draw, which is like this extended metaphor about the Wild West and love being compared to the Wild West. And there's this one line I love, which is, "And this is love. High noon, calamity, hard liquor in the old last chance saloon." So well written. Really recommend it. It was my first Carol Ann Duffy. I might read more of her poetry now. Another book I read this year is Upstream by Mary Oliver. I read it all in one day. I was just like enamored by her poetry, and so I decided to pick up her prose, and like I don't know what else I was expecting. It was incredible. Like Mary Oliver, she's just really talented writer, and it gave me an insight into her day-to-day life. And on the back it says, "Sometimes the desire to be lost again as long ago comes over me like a vapor. With growth into adulthood, responsibilities claimed me so many heavy coats. I didn't choose them. I don't fault them, but it took time to reject them. Now in the spring I kneel. I put my face into the packets of violets, the dampness, the freshness, the sense of everness. Something is wrong. I know it, if I don't keep my attention on eternity. May I be the tiniest nail in the house of the universe, tiny but useful. May I stay forever in the stream. May I look down upon the windflower and the bull thistle and the coreopsis with the greatest respect." And yeah, that'll give you an idea of the kind of like energy that she has. She really makes you like more grounded and present and appreciative and grateful for the world that we live in, especially the natural world. So yeah, Mary Oliver, Upstream. Another really great book I read this year was Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. This is so readable. The energy of the book as well is like, like I laughed at times and I was like really immersed in the book. Also read it in one day. Super readable. Not that long either. It's like 250 pages. And it's all about how to not shy away from your creativity, how to give your creativity the respect it deserves, how to live creatively beyond fear, how to let go of the fear that a lot of us feel in the process of creativity. And it's split up into 6 sections: courage, enchantment, permission, persistence, trust, and divinity. And you also just learn a lot of like tangential facts and interesting things along the way. She's really great at like writing in an anecdotal way, and I just feel like she has a really devoted kind of practice with her writing, and it's really inspiring. If you need kind of a kickstart of your creative energy, I would read this. I read this in May when I was like ready to be done with academia and ready to like get back to my creative stuff. So really inspiring, really well written, totally lives up to every single like hyped thing that I heard about it before. Would recommend. Great book. I picked up this one, Buddhist Teachings, and it's only like 80 pages, and it's just like these little sentences that are all from Buddha, and like these Buddhist ideas and principles, and it just says on the back, ancient wisdom for travelers on the path to nirvana. It's so great. Like, it's wonderful. I did learn a lot from it. Really easy to get through, and again, makes you really mindful and present and connected to the world around you and other people. And I really enjoyed this one. Really short, filled with wisdom, tiny little wisdom. It's the Penguin 60s Classics. Another book that I read this year, I had trouble sleeping and I just wanted to pick up something short and sweet and something I could read before bed. And this was the perfect before bedtime read, Tales from Outer Suburbia by Shaun. Oh my goodness, it's so good. So it's kind of like a graphic novel, but it's also kind of like a short story collection. And the stories in here are super diverse. Like, there's all kinds of stuff, and so is the like art in here. It's absolutely gorgeous. Very like magical realist style, I guess. And yeah, a lot of the stories are super strange. The water buffalo. There's this one which is kind of like a newspaper from this weird universe that Shantan's created, and it's actually kind of genius. Like, reading the newspaper articles, like, truth overrated, explains minister. As the nation faces its most devastating environmental crisis in history, the federal government has been quick to assert that unemployment is at an all-time low, due largely to a redefinition of the term employment. It's just really funny and really intelligent and really beautiful and just so great. So great. I had this book for years, and for some reason I waited so long to read it, but it's brilliant. Finally, we've got An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. I waited also a really long time to read this because I didn't have time to read it when it came out. But it was great. It was one of the best books I've read this year. I mean, I haven't read fiction in a while. Like, other than Douglas Adams, I really haven't been reading very much fiction. And I didn't know what to expect. I literally knew nothing about this book when I went into it. I just knew it was by Hank Green. I know that I love Hank Green and like the kind of content he creates, and so I was like, I'm gonna read his debut novel. And it was great. It was all about, it's kind of like, how do I explain this? It's like a YA sci-fi novel. And, you know, I could kind of tell from the cover that like I would enjoy it. I guess the publishers did a good job of like using colors that are like very sci-fi and like making it seem like there's gonna be something awesome about it. And they were right. It was totally great. Like, once you get past, I guess, the first few chapters is getting to know the characters, and like it takes turns that I was not expecting and that I loved, because I'm just like obsessed with science fiction and comedy are my favorite genres of fiction. So it was sitting right here in my sci-fi comedy shelf, and yeah, such a great book. Really like readable as well. Like, I was itching to like read more of it. Like, I was literally flipping through the pages like, I need to know what happens. Had like just enough mystery and just enough intrigue and just enough like drama to like keep you really, really engaged. So I highly recommend this one. And finally, another Mary Oliver. I mentioned her prose collection, but I've been recently reading her poetry collections. These are selected poems from like all of the poetry she's ever written. She's the one who selected these poems, and just like her prose, it's absolutely mindful and present and appreciative and grateful, and it fills me with so much joy and connects me to the larger picture. And I want to make an essay about Mary Oliver, or like a video about her poetry and her prose and her life philosophy and like why it's so brilliant. So I thought, how else to do that than to read everything, or almost everything she's ever written. So I mean, I'm not done with it yet, but this is like definitely has been one of my favorite books that I've picked up this year. And that's it. I am also currently reading The Rise and Fall of Ancient Egypt, because I realized that, you know, I'm an Egyptian woman, but I know almost nothing about the ancient civilization that used to occupy the same land that I grew up in, and so I just wanted to learn. And I'm also, one of my goals is just to read more nonfiction this year. I just want to read more history. I want to read more nonfiction. I just want to learn, keep learning. So yeah, okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you've been reading and what your favorite books of 2019 are so far, and I will see you very soon with another one. If you'd like to support the content that I create, you can check out my Patreon, or you can like, share, or subscribe to the channel. I'd really appreciate it. And yeah, lots of bookish love,